Welcome, everyone, to my channel. My name is Mama Story, the channel that brings you African stories, folktales, and little life lessons. My friends, subscribe, because the one telling you these stories is none other than me, Mama Story herself. Men, you can subscribe too. Of course, but female solidarity, that's really something special. So subscribe, it's free, and honestly, it would make me so happy. It encourages me to come back with even more true and natural stories. Mama Story is right here, and you are at home.
I discovered it by chance. Or perhaps not. Perhaps the ancestors wanted me to know, wanted me to finally understand the true nature of my sister's torment. It was a moonless night, yet another one. Moonless nights seem to attract revelations the way rotting meat draws scavengers. Kuamata had risen from her mat shortly after midnight. Nothing unusual, she had been going out almost every night in her serpent form for years. But this time, something was different. Her body was trembling. Not from cold, the dry season heat was still stifling even in the darkness. No, she was trembling from within, like a leaf shaken by a wind that only I could feel. I followed her into the spirit world, my consciousness drifting at a cautious distance. She went all the way to the edge of the forest, where the last cassava fields meet the first ancient trees. And there, instead of transforming immediately as she usually did, she collapsed to her knees. She spoke. Not to me, she didn't know I was watching. She spoke to the darkness, to the earth, to something I could not see. "I can't take it anymore." Her voice was broken. Not the cold, commanding voice she used with the village. Not the honeyed, manipulative voice she reserved for Huza. A bare voice, stripped of all her masks. Every night I have to take a life, a human life. If I don't, I feel my power crumbling like old, dried earth. The transformation grows more painful. The scales take longer to cover my skin. My fangs lose their venom. She raised her hands before her face. In the half-light, I saw they were trembling even more violently. At first, it was easy. Isolated elders, careless travelers, children who strayed too far from the village. No one suspected a snake, but now the village is on guard. Your sister, that cursed Camellia, she warned the elders without even saying it openly. People bar their doors. They burn protective herbs. They sleep several to a hut. A bitter laugh escaped her throat. A laugh that sounded like a sob. Last week I couldn't do it. I found no victim. I crawled all night through the tall grass, searching nothing. And in the morning, when I took back my human form, I felt that a part of my power was gone. A small part, tiny, but gone all the same. Like a drop of water evaporating from a cracked calabash. She rose slowly, heavily, like an old woman. If I don't kill tonight, another drop will slip away, and another the night after, and yet another, until nothing remains, until I become an ordinary woman again. No supernatural beauty, no power, nothing. Her voice hardened suddenly. I will not become ordinary again. I will not become Camellia's shadow. I would rather die. And she transformed. But this time I saw the cost of her transformation. Not just the physical change, the painful stretching of bones, the skin splitting to make way for scales, the jaw dislocating to accommodate her fangs. No, I saw the spiritual price. A part of her life essence was consumed, a small inner flame that would never fully rekindle. Each transformation into a serpent cost her a little of what made her a human being. And the murder she would commit that night, for she would find a victim, she was too desperate to fail. That murder would not restore what she had lost. It would only prevent the next loss. That was the true price of her powers. A slow, inexorable descent into something less than human. I stayed there, unseen in the spirit world, watching the serpent slither into the darkness of the forest. And for the first time in years, I wept for my sister. Not for what she was about to do to some innocent victim that night that I could not forgive her for, I would never forgive her for, but for what she had become. For the laughing child who used to hold my hand before the rain puddles. For the young girl who had discovered her powers and who, instead of being guided, supported, protected, had been left to fend for herself, to her fears, to her jealousies. Spiritual powers are not free. Neither were mine. But the price I paid, the sleepless nights, the weight of responsibility, the loneliness of knowing what others do not, that price was gentle compared to hers. Kuamata paid in human lives, and in humanity. It was not long after that night of revelation that King Jaukara began to take an interest in me, an interest that had nothing benevolent about it. I must first tell you about him. Describe him as he truly is, not as the griots sing of him in their self-serving praise. Jaukara had ascended the throne by pushing his own uncle into a hunting accident that everyone knew was murder, but no one dared name. He had inherited a prosperous kingdom, fertile lands, fish-filled rivers, game-rich forests, loyal villages that paid their tributes without murmur. But that was not enough for him. Power for Jaukara was not a duty. It was a possession, a thing to be accumulated like cowries or cattle, and he always wanted more. He had heard of me, of course, the elder twin blessed by the ancestors, the one who healed for free, the one whom even the spirits listened to. At first he had smiled indulgently, a woman, after all, a village girl, nothing that could threaten a king. But Huza had changed that. I only learned of it much later, through the confidences of a palace servant I had cured of a stubborn fever. She owed me her life, and she repaid me in truth. Huza had gone to the royal palace one sweltering afternoon. He had requested a private audience with the king, an audience he had secured by slipping a few silver coins into the hand of the chief servant. He had prostrated himself before Jaukara with all the false humility he could muster. "Great king, light of the kingdom, descendant of lions and leopards, hear the words the spirits have entrusted to me in my dreams." Jaukara, already half-drunk on palm wine, had waved a careless hand. "Speak, marabout, but be quick. The heat exhausts me." Huza had straightened up, his eyes gleaming with that cunning light I knew all too well. "Great king, you know the young woman called Camellia, the elder twin of the village of Asan, the one who heals, the one the ancestors protect. I know her by reputation, a healer. What of it? She is far more than a healer, great king. The spirits have shown me her destiny, and that destiny, it is bound to yours." The king had straightened slightly, his interest stirred despite himself. "Explain!" Huza had taken his time, drawing out the suspense like a skilled storyteller. "The ancestral spirits of this land, the true spirits, not those the villagers pray to in ignorance, they have chosen Camellia for a great destiny. They want her to become queen." Silence had fallen over the room, heavy as a stone. "Queen!" Jaukara's voice had grown dangerously calm. "Queen of what?" "Queen of this kingdom, great king, in your place, or rather after you. The spirits say the current line of kings is corrupt, weakened. That new blood is needed. Blessed blood, the blood of Camellia." It was a lie, a shameless lie, fabricated entirely by Huza and most likely fed to him by Kuamata. The ancestors had never spoken to me of any throne. They had never mentioned Jaukara other than as a king to be tolerated, not overthrown. But Huza knew exactly where to strike. He knew Jaukara's greatest weakness, his terror of losing power. "You lie," the king growled, but his voice trembled slightly. "I never lie about the messages of the spirits, great king. They told me more still. They told me that Camellia is not yet aware of this destiny. She will learn of it soon in her own dreams, and when she does she will act. She is patient, she is powerful, and she is loved by the people." The killing blow, loved by the people. That was everything Jaukara was not. He was feared, respected out of obligation, obeyed out of necessity. But loved? Who could love a king who levied ever heavier taxes, who grew rich while the villages struggled to survive the dry seasons? "What must I do?" Jaukara asked, and in his voice there was no king left. There was only a man terrified of losing the very thing that defined his entire existence. Huza smiled, a serpent's smile. "Great king, I cannot counsel you to act against the will of the spirits. That would be sacrilege, but the spirits are sometimes obscure in their messages. Perhaps if Camellia were to disappear before she understood her destiny, the spirits might choose someone else, someone more pliable." The first attempt was almost laughable. A venomous snake, a real snake, not my sister in her cursed form, slipped into my hut while I slept. A sand viper, quick, lethal within hours. I sensed its presence before it even crossed the threshold. My Ori woke me with a start. I seized the reptile behind its triangular head before it could strike and released it into the bush far from the village. The next day I found footprints before my door. The prints of a grown man, shod in leather sandals, not the bare feet of villagers. A palace guard, most likely. I said nothing. What good would it do? To accuse the king without proof was to sign my own death warrant in a far more certain manner than a snake slipped through the shadows. The second attempt was more elaborate. Poison in the water of my calabash. Not just any poison, a subtle decoction of bitter roots and venomous mushrooms prepared by an experienced poisoner. It was nearly tasteless, nearly odorless. Nearly. But my body, attuned to the rhythms of the earth and the ancestors, recognized the threat the moment my lips touched the rim of the calabash. I spat it out immediately. The small sip that had passed my throat earned me 3 days of fever and vomiting. 3 days during which Kuamata sat in a corner of our hut, silent, watching me suffer with an unreadable expression. Was it satisfaction? Impatience? Or, and this chilled me more than all the rest, a twisted form of concern, as though she could not bear the thought of someone other than herself causing my ruin. The third attempt was the most direct. 2 men armed with machetes waited for me on the path to the river, one evening when I was returning late after gathering medicinal herbs for a pregnant woman from the neighboring village. They were masked, but their wraps were too clean, their machetes too well-sharpened palace guards, once again, disguised in haste. They burst from the bushes, shouting to steal their courage. I had no need to fight. I simply raised my right hand, palm open towards them, and spoke in the old tongue, the one the trees and the stones understand, the one the ancestors had taught me in my dreams.